They say that betrayal can break a person, but for one billionaire heiress, it did something far more profound. It set her on a secret journey to find out if true kindness still existed in a world run by greed. This is a story that challenges the very idea of wealth, proving that a person's real value isn't in their bank account, but in the integrity of their heart when no one is watching. It's the story of a woman who had everything, yet felt completely lost, and the humble farmer who had next to nothing, but held the key to saving her. That farmer was Gerald Medina, a man whose life was etched into the soil of his family's land. His days were a quiet battle for survival, yet his spirit remained unbroken. One fateful evening, his world collided with that of a mysterious woman he found lost on his property. In a simple, heart-aching act, he saved a stranger on his farm, offering her shelter without question. He had no way of knowing that this woman, Ellis, was the very billionaire heiress on a secret quest, testing the soul of humanity. But while this unlikely connection blossomed, a dark shadow loomed over Gerald. A ruthless developer was closing in, determined to steal his legacy for pennies, pushing him to the absolute brink of despair. The dramatic irony is almost painful as Gerald fought desperately to save his last few acres. The woman under his roof possessed the silent power to buy and sell entire cities. This wasn't just a story about two people meeting, it was a story about a good man drowning, completely unaware that he had just rescued a living, breathing lifeboat. Of course, the most shocking part of this story isn't just who she was, but what happened next. She would vanish as mysteriously as she appeared, only to return at his darkest hour in a way no one could ever predict. Prepare yourself for a tale of destiny, an unforgettable love story, and a power move so stunning it will restore your faith in justice. You are about to witness how one act of kindness can trigger an avalanche of redemption, leading to a surprise that changes everything forever. We believe stories like this connect us all, and we want to feel connected to you. So please, do us a favor and comment below telling us what beautiful city you're watching from today. We want to know how far this story has traveled. And if you're ready to have your faith in humanity restored, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next story, and share this video with one person you know will be touched by it. You see, some stories don't start with a bang, but with a whisper of the wind through endless fields of gold. This was the world of Gerald Medina, a simple farmer whose wealth wasn't in his pockets, but in the rich soil under his fingernails and the unwavering kindness in his soul. His days were a steady rhythm of hard work and quiet solitude, a life far removed from the noise of the world. He didn't know it yet, but a surprising twist of destiny was already hurtling toward him, about to change everything he ever knew about his quiet existence. It was on a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. Days tended to blur together for Gerald when he first saw her. A stranger, completely out of place amidst the rustic landscape, looking as lost as a ship without a rudder. She was collapsed near the old oak tree that marked the edge of his property, a stark contrast to the familiar scenery. Without a moment's hesitation, he dropped his tools. It wasn't a choice, really, for a man like Gerald. Helping someone in need was as natural as breathing. This one act would prove to be monumental. He approached her cautiously, his heavy work boots sinking into the soft earth. The woman, who he would later know as Ellis, was a picture of weary distress. But even through the dirt and exhaustion, there was an air about her, a secret elegance he couldn't quite place. She was a stranger, yes, but there was something in her eyes that sparked a feeling of familiarity, a heart-aching vulnerability that called to him. He had no idea this woman was an heiress, carrying a world of secrets on her shoulders. "Are you all right, ma'am?" His voice was gentle, a stark contrast to his calloused hands. He offered her his canteen of water without a second thought, a simple gesture of unconditional kindness that seemed to surprise her. She drank gratefully, her eyes never leaving his, searching for something she couldn't name. In that moment, He wasn't just a farmer, he was the man who saved her, a safe harbor in a storm she had been weathering all on her own. This was the quiet beginning of their improbable love story. She didn't offer many details about her situation, and Gerald, bless his heart, didn't push. He understood that some stories are too heavy to be shared with a stranger, even a kind one. He simply led her back to his modest farmhouse, a sanctuary of warmth and safety. The entire encounter felt surreal, an emotional chapter he hadn't expected to be written into his life's book. The secret of her identity as a billionaire remained perfectly hidden behind her tired, grateful eyes. He gave her a fresh blanket and a warm meal, asking for nothing in return, his actions painting a vivid picture of his character. As the sun set, casting long shadows across his land, the stranger, Angela Ellis, watched him with a growing sense of awe. She had met countless people in her life, but none with a heart so pure. He fell asleep that night, the farmer who saved a lost soul, completely unaware that his simple act of kindness had just sown the seeds for a future filled with unbelievable surprise and, eventually, a profound redemption. Months had trickled by, turning the memory of the mysterious stranger into something of a daydream for Gerald Medina. The seasons began to change, and life on the farm continued its relentless, steady pace. He often wondered about the woman he had saved, a fleeting character in his quiet life. Then, one heck of a stormy night, when the rain was hammering down as if trying to shatter the world, there was a frantic knock on his door. It was a sound so urgent, it felt like a punch to the heart, a stark interruption to the symphony of the storm. Peeking through the old wooden door, Gerald's eyes widened in a surprise that almost knocked the wind out of him. It was her, Angela Ellis, but she looked different, more broken than before. Her clothes were soaked, her face was a canvas of pure despair, and she was trembling. Though whether from the cold or from fear, he couldn't tell. This wasn't the quiet, reserved stranger from before. This was a woman at the absolute end of her rope, a soul crying out for help in the middle of a tempest. "I've lost everything," she stammered, the words barely audible over the howling wind, her voice cracking with an emotional weight that felt ancient. "I have nowhere else to go." This was a raw, unfiltered confession, a plea that hung in the air between them, heavy and fragile. She looked directly at him, her eyes begging him to understand, to remember the kindness he had once shown her. For Angela, this farmer was the only beacon of hope she had left in a world that had suddenly turned dark and hostile. There was no hesitation in Gerald's response, not even for a heartbeat. He simply opened the door wider, a silent invitation into the warmth and safety of his home. He didn't ask questions, he didn't demand explanations. He saw a person in need, the same lost stranger he had helped before, and that was all that mattered. The intricate secret of her billionaire life was now buried under a new layer of mystery and pain, making her appear as just a victim of cruel circumstances. As she stepped inside, dripping rainwater onto his worn wooden floors, a sense of destiny seemed to click into place, as if the universe had been waiting for this exact moment. He wrapped her in a thick, dry blanket, the simple gesture speaking volumes. This wasn't just about offering shelter, it was an act of profound humanity, a heart-aching moment that solidified a bond that was still unspoken. He had saved her once from being lost, and now it seemed he was being asked to do it all over again. The storm raged on outside, but within the four walls of the small farmhouse, a fragile peace began to settle. Gerald had no way of knowing the incredible plot twist that was unfolding right before his very eyes. He just saw a woman he felt inexplicably drawn to, a soul he felt compelled to protect. He believed her story of losing everything, never once suspecting that her everything was a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. The night was far from over, and more secrets were yet to surface. Let's be clear, Gerald Medina was by no means a wealthy man. His farmhouse was humble, his cupboards were often just full enough, and his savings were meager, a testament to the tough life of a small-time farmer. Yet, When he looked at Angela Ellis shivering in his home, he didn't think of his own scarcity. He saw only her need. That, right there, is the mark of a truly rich soul. He immediately set about making her a simple meal, a warm soup that felt like a hug in a bowl. This act of kindness was unconditional and pure, flowing from him as naturally as water from a spring. He asked for nothing in return and expected no explanation for her sudden and desperate arrival. For a woman like Angela, an heiress accustomed to transactions and ulterior motives, this was a profound surprise. She watched him, this simple farmer, moving about his kitchen with a quiet purpose, and felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the soup. It was a heart-aching and deeply emotional experience. He offered her his own bed for the night, insisting he would be perfectly comfortable on the old couch in the living room. "You need your rest," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. This wasn't just politeness, it was a deep, instinctual act of protection and care for the stranger who had twice appeared in his life like a twist of destiny. He was offering her the very best of the little he had, a sacrifice she hadn't experienced from anyone, let alone someone who had so much less than her. As Angela lay in the warmth of the small bedroom, she could hear the storm outside and the quiet, steady breathing of the man in the next room. The contrast was staggering. The world outside was chaotic and cruel, a place that had recently betrayed her. But inside this little house, with this unassuming farmer, she felt safer than she had in years. His kindness was a shield, a promise that for tonight, at least, she was saved from whatever demons were chasing her. Gerald, for his part, didn't see his actions as anything special. It was just who he was. In his mind, you help people when they're down, period. You don't weigh the costs. You just do it. He was completely unaware that this simple display of decency was part of a much larger secret test. He was proving, without knowing it, that his character was worth more than any billionaire's fortune, setting the stage for a future he couldn't possibly imagine. The night wore on, and the foundations of an extraordinary love story were being laid, not with grand gestures, but with soup, a warm bed, and the quiet dignity of a good man. Angela, the secret heiress, was seeing the world through new eyes, realizing that true wealth had nothing to do with money. And she couldn't help but wonder what other struggles this kind-hearted man faced in his own life, a life he seemed to navigate with such grace. As the days turned into a week, Angela Ellis settled into a quiet routine on the farm, becoming more than just a stranger seeking refuge. She insisted on helping, her soft hands quickly learning the rhythm of farm chores. It was during this time that she saw the true measure of Gerald Medina. She watched him work from sunup to sundown, his dedication to the land a silent, powerful testament to his character. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a guardian of his family's legacy, a man of profound integrity. But a shadow loomed over this idyllic hard work. One afternoon, a slick car, completely out of place on the dirt road, rolled up to the farmhouse. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, his smile as fake as a $3 bill. This was Mr. Thompson, a greedy developer who had been circling Gerald's land like a vulture. He saw acres of potential profit, not a family's home, and his presence immediately filled the air with a suffocating tension. Thompson's offers were insulting, practically pennies for a property that held generations of history and sweat. He spoke of progress and opportunity, but his words were laced with threats and condescension, designed to make Gerald feel small and powerless. Angela watched from the porch, her heart aching with a quiet fury. She saw the developer's disdain for the honest farmer, and it was a look she knew all too well from her own world, the world of the cold-hearted billionaire class. Despite the immense pressure, Gerald never buckled. He stood his ground with a quiet dignity that was more powerful than any threat Thompson could muster. "This land isn't for sale," he would say, his voice firm. He was facing the potential loss of everything, a challenge that required immense strength for overcoming, yet he never compromised his principles. Angela saw his fear, but she also saw his courage, and her admiration for this man grew tenfold. He was fighting for his home. She saw the worry etched on his face late at night when he thought she was asleep, the way he would pore over stacks of bills and official-looking letters. He was struggling, barely keeping his head above water, yet he had opened his home to a stranger without a second thought. This heart-aching realization hit Angela with the force of a physical blow. The man who had saved her was himself in desperate need of being saved, though his pride would never allow him to admit it. This experience solidified something within Angela. She wasn't just a passive observer anymore. She was emotionally invested in this farmer's fight. His struggle became her struggle. She saw the injustice of it all, a good man being bullied by a corporate shark. And as she watched the developer drive away in a cloud of dust, a secret steely resolve began to form in her heart. She knew something had to be done, but what could a helpless woman with nothing to her name possibly do? With the threat of the developer now a constant, grim backdrop, something beautiful and unexpected began to blossom between Gerald and Angela. They started working side by side, a silent partnership that quickly grew into a deep, unspoken bond. Mending fences, tending to the animals, and harvesting crops became the stage for their burgeoning love story. In the shared sweat and soil, they found a connection that was more real and profound than anything either had ever known. The long days were filled with more than just work, they were filled with stories. He told her about his parents, about growing up on this very land, and his dream of one day making the farm thrive enough to be secure. His dreams were simple, honest, and heart-aching. He wasn't chasing a fortune, he just wanted to honor his legacy. His vulnerability was a surprise to her, a stark contrast to the guarded men she knew in her life as an heiress. In return, Angela, the secret billionaire, shared carefully edited pieces of her own life. She spoke of feeling lost, of being surrounded by people who only saw what she represented, not who she was. She framed her story as that of a woman escaping a toxic environment, a narrative that was true in its emotional core, even if it omitted the staggering financial details. To Gerald, she was just Angela, a stranger with a sad past, a kindred spirit he felt a powerful urge to protect. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance, a comfortable silence settled between them. It was in these quiet moments that their connection deepened the most. No words were needed. It was a shared glance, a small smile, the way he'd gently tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. This was the gentle unfolding of destiny, two people from impossibly different worlds finding a common ground in shared humanity and mutual respect. The farm, once a place of solitude for Gerald, was now filled with laughter and companionship. He found himself looking forward to each day, not just for the work, but for the chance to be near her. He was falling in love, and the emotional weight of that realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. How could he, a poor farmer on the brink of losing everything, possibly offer anything to a woman like Angela? It seemed like an impossible dream. For Angela, this experience was a revelation. She was seeing life from a perspective she never knew existed, a life built on integrity and kindness rather than power and wealth. The bond she was forming with Gerald felt more valuable than her entire inheritance. It was a heart-aching, genuine connection that she knew, with absolute certainty, she couldn't live without. But her enormous secret still lingered between them, a ticking clock that threatened to change everything. There came a night when the weight on Gerald Medina's shoulders became too heavy to bear alone. The moon was high and bright, casting a silver glow over the fields he was so terrified of losing. He and Angela were cleaning up after a simple dinner, the easy silence between them now a familiar comfort. But tonight, it was different. He was quieter than usual, a deep emotional turmoil brewing just beneath the surface, visible only in the tension in his jaw and the sadness in his eyes. Finally, he stopped, his back to her as he stared out the kitchen window into the darkness. "This farm," he began, his voice thick with unshed tears. "It's all I have left of them." He didn't need to say who they were. Angela knew he was talking about his parents. He was finally letting her see past the strong farmer, revealing the vulnerable man underneath. He was confiding in her, trusting her with his deepest fear, a true sign of their deepening love story. He turned to face her, his expression a heartbreaking mix of pride and despair. "That developer, Thompson, he's not just trying to take my land. He's trying to erase my entire history." He explained how his father had built this house with his own 2 hands, how his mother had planted the garden that still bloomed every spring. This wasn't just dirt and wood, it was a living legacy, a heartaching testament to the love and hard work that had shaped him. Losing it would be like losing them all over again. Angela listened, her heart breaking for him. She saw the full scale of his struggle for overcoming, the immense pressure he was under to protect his heritage. He spoke of the foreclosure notices, the mounting debt, and the feeling of being trapped with no way out. He confessed that he felt like he was failing his parents, a secret shame he had carried alone for so long. He was on the verge of being broken, and he desperately needed someone to save him. In that moment of raw vulnerability, Angela felt an overwhelming surge of love and a fierce desire to protect him. She wanted to tell him everything, to reveal her secret identity as a billionaire heiress and promise him that all his problems would disappear. But she couldn't. Not yet. The betrayal that had driven her to this masquerade was still too fresh, and she had to be absolutely sure of his heart. So she did the only thing she could. She walked over to him and simply held him, offering him the silent, unwavering support he had so freely given her. It was a powerful, emotional role reversal. The man who had saved the lost stranger was now being comforted by her, drawing strength from her presence. She whispered promises of hope, telling him they would find a way through this together, all the while knowing her secret held the key to his redemption. The stage was being set for a plot twist he would never see coming. The morning after Gerald poured his heart out, the farmhouse felt different. It was too quiet. The usual sounds of Angela humming softly in the kitchen were absent. A knot of unease tightened in Gerald's stomach as he called her name, the silence that answered him feeling heavy and ominous. He searched the small house, his heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. She was gone, vanished into thin air as mysteriously as she had first appeared. On the pillow where she had slept, a small, neatly folded piece of paper sat alone. It wasn't a letter, just a short note. "Thank you for everything. You saved me in more ways than you know." That was it. No explanation, no promise to return, no goodbye. The words, meant to convey gratitude, felt like a slap in the face. It was a devastating surprise, a cruel plot twist in the middle of their unfolding love story, leaving him utterly heartbroken. Confusion warred with a deep, aching sadness in Gerald's chest. Why? Why would she leave now, especially after he had just shared his deepest fears with her? Had he scared her away with his problems? Was their connection all in his head? 1,000 painful questions swirled in his mind, each one chipping away at the hope that had started to grow in his heart. The stranger he had come to love was once again a complete and utter secret. He spent the next few days in a fog, the farm feeling empty and desolate without her presence. Every corner of his home held a memory of her chair she sat in, the mug she drank from, the fields where they had worked side by side. The kindness he had shown her now felt like a mistake, a foolish opening of his heart that had only led to pain. The emotional whiplash was severe, leaving him more alone than he had ever been before. This disappearance was a critical turning point. For Angela, it was a necessary, albeit painful, step in her plan. But for Gerald, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. He had trusted her, loved her even, and she had abandoned him at his lowest point. He had no idea that her sudden departure was not an ending, but the catalyst for the final act, the key to his ultimate redemption and the overcoming of all his troubles. But all Gerald knew was the silence she had left behind. He was a simple farmer, left with a broken heart and a small cryptic note. He felt foolish for believing that destiny had brought someone special into his life. As he crumpled the note in his hand, he felt the last of his hope drain away. Little did he know, the biggest surprise of his life was still waiting just around the corner. The weeks following Angela's disappearance were a blur of numb, back-breaking work for Gerald Medina. He threw himself into his chores, trying to sweat out the heartbreak and confusion that clung to him like a shroud. The farm was his only focus now, a desperate, last-ditch effort to hold on to the one thing he had left. But without Angela, the fight felt hollow, the burden of his secret financial troubles heavier than ever. The vibrant hope she had brought into his life had vanished with her. Just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, the slick black car of the developer, Mr. Thompson, appeared on the horizon once again. This time, Thompson didn't bother with fake smiles or hollow offers. He stepped out of his car with a predatory gleam in his eye, a man who knew he had won. In his hand, he held a single devastating piece of paper, a final foreclosure notice. The farmer's worst nightmare had just become a reality. 24 hours, Medina, Thompson sneered, savoring the words as he shoved the notice into Gerald's chest. You have 24 hours to pack up your memories and get off my property. The cruelty in his voice was palpable. He saw this not as a tragedy, but as a victory, a testament to his own power. For Gerald, the words felt like a physical blow, knocking all the air from his lungs. It was the final nail in the coffin of his family's legacy. Staring at the official document, Gerald felt a profound and crushing sense of defeat. He had fought so hard for so long. He had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into this land. He had faced the challenge with all the strength he could muster, but it wasn't enough. The struggle for overcoming seemed to have reached its bitter end. There were no more options, no more time, and no more hope. The developer had finally broken him. He thought of Angela, a fresh wave of pain washing over him. He had pictured them facing this together, a fantasy that now seemed utterly pathetic. She was gone. He was alone. The love story he had imagined was just a fairy tale, and this cold, hard piece of paper was his reality. The world felt unjust and cruel, a place where kindness and hard work meant nothing in the face of greed and power. As the sun began to set on what he believed was his last day on the farm, Gerald walked through his fields one final time. Each step was heavy with the weight of failure and loss. He was a man saved by no one, about to lose everything he had ever loved. He had no idea that destiny was playing a long game, and that a shocking, heart-aching plot twist was about to be delivered right to his doorstep. The final countdown had begun. The final morning dawned gray and unforgiving, mirroring the state of Gerald Medina's soul. He spent the early hours packing a single, small box with the few possessions that truly mattered: a faded photograph of his parents, his father's old pocket watch, and a handful of soil from the farm. It was a pathetic tribute to a lifetime of work. Defeat was a bitter taste in his mouth. He was ready to surrender, to walk away from the only home he had ever known, a farmer stripped of his land and his dignity. He sat on his porch steps, the foreclosure notice lying limp in his hand, waiting for Thompson to arrive and gloat over his victory. The silence of the countryside was heavy, broken only by the mournful cry of a distant bird. This was it, the end of the line. The quiet redemption he had always hoped for was just a foolish dream. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the final humiliation, the final emotional blow. Suddenly, a low rumble broke the silence. It wasn't the sound of Thompson's car. It was deeper, more powerful. Gerald opened his eyes and stared down the long dirt road in disbelief. A surprise of epic proportions was rolling toward him. It wasn't one car, but a fleet of them. Sleek, black luxury vehicles that looked like they belonged in a movie, kicking up dust as they advanced on his humble farmhouse. They were so out of place it felt like an alien invasion. The convoy came to a smooth, silent stop right in front of his house, the cars gleaming under the morning sun. For a moment, Gerald was frozen, completely bewildered. Was this some kind of sick joke by the developer? A final, ostentatious display of power and wealth to rub salt in his wound. He couldn't imagine who else it could be. He was just a simple farmer. His world had no place for this kind of spectacle. Doors opened in perfect unison, and men in sharp, dark suits emerged, their expressions professional and unreadable. They moved with an efficiency that spoke of high-level security and immense power. They didn't approach him, but instead formed a respectful perimeter, their attention focused on the main car in the center. The air crackled with anticipation and mystery. Who on earth was in that car? Gerald's heart hammered in his chest, a mix of fear and a wild, illogical flicker of hope. This had to be a mistake. They had the wrong farm, the wrong man. And yet, as the back door of the central vehicle began to open, he felt a strange sense of destiny wash over him. He had no idea that everything he thought he knew about his life, about kindness, and about the stranger he once saved was about to be turned completely upside down. Just as Mr. Thompson's car pulled up, ready for the final eviction, the rear door of the lead luxury car swung open. The first thing Gerald saw was a stunningly expensive high-heeled shoe stepping onto his dusty farm, ground a sight so incongruous it seemed to bend reality. Then, a figure emerged, moving with a grace and confidence that commanded instant attention. Gerald's breath hitched in his throat, his mind struggling to process the impossible. It was Angela Ellis, but this was not the distressed, lost stranger he knew. This was a different woman entirely. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored power suit that probably cost more than his entire farm. Her hair and makeup were flawless, and she carried herself with an aura of untouchable authority. This was not the woman who had shared humble meals with him. This was a queen stepping into her court. The surprise was so profound, so utterly shocking, that Gerald could do nothing but stare, his mouth agape. Mr. Thompson, who had been striding forward with a smug grin, stopped dead in his tracks. His jaw literally dropped, his look of arrogant victory dissolving into pure, unadulterated confusion and alarm. He looked from the powerful woman back to the simple farmer and then back again, the gears in his greedy mind grinding to a halt. He recognized power when he saw it, and this woman radiated it in waves. This stunning plot twist had completely derailed his triumphant moment. Angela's eyes, however, were fixed only on Gerald. She gave him a small, sad smile, an acknowledgement of the pain and confusion she had put him through. In that single glance, he saw a flicker of the woman he had known, the woman he had fallen in love with. But it was wrapped in this new, intimidating persona, leaving him more bewildered than ever. Who was this woman? What was this secret she had been hiding? She walked forward, her heels clicking with purpose on the path to the porch, the sound like a countdown to a revelation. Her team of suited men stood by, silent and watchful. The entire scene was surreal, a high-stakes corporate drama playing out on the set of a humble country farm. The emotional tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The farmer and the developer were both rendered speechless, puppets in a play they didn't know they were a part of. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of all the secrets and lies, kindness and heartbreak. Angela had returned not as a victim, but as a force of nature. She hadn't just come back for him, she had come back to enact a plan of justice and redemption that would change their lives forever. The lost heiress was lost no more, and she was about to reveal the full extent of her power. Angela stopped directly in front of Mr. Thompson, who was now visibly sweating, his bravado completely gone. She didn't even give him a second glance. Instead, she turned her full attention to Gerald, her expression softening. "Gerald," she began, her voice calm and clear, yet carrying an authority that silenced the entire farm. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago. A secret I had to keep until I was sure." She took a deep breath, the moment hanging in the air, charged with unspoken emotion. "My name is Angela Ellis, but I'm not the woman with nothing that you took in." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "I am the sole heiress to Ellis Global Enterprises." The name dropped into the silence like a stone. A corporate empire so massive and influential that even a small-time developer like Thompson knew it instantly. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. A wave of shock, so powerful it felt physical, washed over Gerald Medina. An heiress? A billionaire? The woman he had shared his home with, confided his deepest fears to, and fallen in love with, was one of the wealthiest women in the world. It didn't make sense. His mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of the vulnerable stranger with the powerful corporate figure standing before him. It was the most incredible plot twist of his life. Angela continued, her voice steady. "My father passed away 6 months ago, leaving me in charge of everything. But his world was full of sharks, people who saw me as nothing more than a name on a letterhead. After a deep personal betrayal, I needed to know if there was any genuine kindness left in the world, or if everything and everyone was driven by greed." Her eyes were locked on Gerald's, telling a story of pain and disillusionment he was finally beginning to understand. This was the reason for her strange appearances, her secrecy. It was all a test. A desperate search for something real in a life that had become fake. The farmer, in his simple, unassuming way, had been the answer to her question. He had shown her a heart-aching decency without ever knowing who she was or what she had. He had passed a test he never even knew he was taking, proving his character was pure gold. The revelation was overwhelming, a flood of information that recontextualized everything. The lost stranger, the shared dreams, her sudden disappearance site all clicked into place, albeit in a way that left Gerald feeling dizzy and completely out of his depth. He had been a part of a secret story, a pawn in a billionaire's emotional journey. The love story he thought was simple had just become impossibly complex. "After my father died," Angela explained, her voice softening as she spoke directly to Gerald, ignoring the stunned developer, "I was betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust. My fiancé, he wasn't in love with me, he was in love with my inheritance." The confession was raw and painful, a glimpse into the lonely life of the billionaire heiress. "He saw me as a contract, a means to an end. It broke me. It made me question everyone and everything I had ever known." She described how she had orchestrated her own disappearance from her world, leaving everything behind to walk among ordinary people. She wanted to be a stranger, to have nothing, to see how the world would treat a person with no name and no money. It was a desperate, emotional gamble, a secret quest to find a single spark of genuine human decency. "Most people, they just walked past," she said, a flicker of old pain in her eyes. "Or they saw me as a nuisance, a problem to be ignored. But not you, Gerald," she said, her voice now filled with a warmth that melted away her powerful exterior. "You didn't see a problem. You saw a person. You offered me water, food, and shelter without asking a single question. You showed me a kindness I had started to believe didn't exist anymore." This was her heart-aching testimony, a validation of every decent impulse the simple farmer had ever had. He hadn't just helped a woman, he had restored a billionaire's faith in humanity. She was testing the world, and Gerald was the only one who passed. He treated her with a dignity and respect that had nothing to do with who she was, but everything to do with who he was. This revelation was the key to her entire story, the motivation behind her strange behavior. She wasn't just a rich woman playing games, she was a wounded soul searching for something real. And by pure chance, by a twist of destiny, she had stumbled upon it on his farm. The weight of her words began to sink in for Gerald. The love story he had mourned was real after all, just far more complex than he had imagined. His simple actions, born from his character, had meant the world to this powerful woman. He wasn't a fool for loving her. He was the reason she had learned to believe in love again. It was an incredible, overwhelming thought, a surprise that was slowly healing his broken heart. This explanation was a turning point. It wasn't just about her secret identity, it was about his. He wasn't just a poor farmer on the verge of losing his home. He was the man whose good heart had captured the attention of an heiress. He had, in his own quiet way, saved her from her own cynical world, setting the stage for a redemption he never knew he needed. Having laid her heart bare for Gerald, Angela Ellis then pivoted, her entire demeanor shifting from vulnerable to formidable in the blink of an eye. She turned her steely gaze upon the developer, Mr. Thompson, who seemed to shrink under its intensity. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice now cold and sharp as glass, "I believe you're under the impression that you are in a position of power here. You are sorely mistaken. This is not a negotiation." Thompson stammered, trying to regain some semblance of control. I hold the mortgage. This is a legal foreclosure. This land is mine." He checked his watch, a pathetic attempt at authority. Less than an hour. His voice was loud, but it trembled, betraying his fear. He was facing a power he couldn't comprehend, and he was losing his footing fast. This was a plot twist he could never have anticipated. In his greedy schemes, Angela allowed a small, dangerous smile to play on her lips. "That's where you're wrong," she stated calmly. "You see, for the past 2 weeks, while you've been harassing this good man, I've been a little busy myself." She paused for dramatic effect, letting the tension build to an unbearable level. This was a power move, executed with the precision of a corporate predator, and it was a stunning surprise to everyone present. "I made a few phone calls, moved some assets," she continued, her tone deceptively casual. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, a subsidiary of Ellis Global Enterprises completed the acquisition of a controlling stake in the regional bank that holds Mr. Medina's mortgage." She let the words sink in. "To put it in terms you might understand, I own the bank. I own your debt. And by extension, Mr. Thompson, right now, I own you." The developer's face went white, the color draining from it as if had been struck. The truth of his situation crashed down on him. He hadn't been fighting a poor farmer. He had been fighting a billionaire heiress, and he had lost before he even knew the game had started. It was a checkmate so complete, so utterly devastating, that all he could do was stand there, speechless and defeated. This was a masterclass in turning the tables. For Gerald, this was almost too much to comprehend. Just moments ago, he was a man who had lost everything. Now, the woman he loved had just announced, in the most spectacular way imaginable, that she had effectively bought the entire system. That was crushing him. This wasn't just being saved, this was a level of redemption he couldn't have dreamed of. The destiny that had brought this stranger to his farm was proving to be more incredible than any fairy tale. Developer utterly silenced. One of Angela's assistants stepped forward, holding a pristine leather folder. Angela took it, her movements deliberate and full of purpose. She opened it and removed a single, crisp document. It was the deed to the farm, her farm now. She had saved it from the clutches of the bank, from the greed of men like Thompson. This was the culmination of her secret plan, the final move in her game. She walked past the frozen developer and stood directly in front of Gerald, her eyes filled with a deep, unwavering affection. "This belongs to you," she said softly, her voice for his ears only. She held out the deed to him. At the top, in bold letters, it stated that the property was paid in full, the mortgage completely absolved. All liens were cleared. The farm was his, free and clear. For the first time in his life, it was truly, unconditionally his. Gerald stared at the paper, his hands trembling as he took it. He read the words, but they didn't seem real. It was a dream, This single piece of paper represented the end of all his fears, the answer to all his prayers. It was the redemption of his family's legacy, handed to him by the stranger he had shown a simple kindness to. The emotional weight of the moment was staggering, a heart-aching climax to a lifetime of struggle. He was in every sense of the word saved. Then, Angela turned back to Thompson, her voice ringing out with cold, hard authority for all to hear. As for you, she declared, your predatory practices in this area are over. I've seen your files. I know every dirty deal you've made. Consider your lines of credit frozen and your assets under review. You will never threaten this community or any good person in it ever again. Now, get off this property. It was not a request. It was a command. Defeated and humiliated, Thompson didn't say a word. He simply turned, stumbled back to his car like a man in a trance, and drove away, his cloud of dust now a symbol of his hasty retreat. The threat was gone. Vanquished. The farmer had won, not through a fight, but through the unexpected power of a love story he never knew was being written. It was a victory for the underdog, a triumph of kindness over greed. Gerald looked from the retreating car back to Angela, the deed clutched in his hand like a holy relic. Tears welled in his eyes, tears of gratitude, of shock, of a joy so profound he couldn't speak. He had been through the depths of despair and was now standing on the peak of an unbelievable surprise. He had lost everything and gained it all back in the span of an hour, and the incredible woman responsible was standing right in front of him, with the developer gone and the dust settling. An intimate quiet returned to the farm, wrapping around Gerald and Angela. He was still clutching the deed, staring at her with a look of pure wonder. How could he ever repay her? What could a simple farmer possibly offer a billionaire heiress who had just handed him back his entire world? He felt a familiar wave of inadequacy, the chasm between their lives seeming wider than ever, despite what she had just done for him. Sensing his thoughts, Angela stepped closer, gently placing her hand over his on the deed. Gerald, please don't look at me like that, she whispered, her voice filled with a sincere, emotional plea. You don't owe me anything. It's the other way around. She looked him directly in the eyes, wanting him to understand the depth of her words. You saved me first. You gave me hope when I had none. That is a debt no amount of money can ever repay. This, she said, gesturing to the farm, the expensive cars, her entire world. This is all just stuff. It's paper and numbers. But your heart, Gerald, your kindness, HEIRESS, the real fortune. It's the only thing in this world that's actually priceless. Her confession was the final, heart-aching piece of their story. She, the woman who had everything, was telling him that he was the truly wealthy one. It was the ultimate validation of his life and character. She then delivered her final, most important proposal, the one that had nothing to do with banks or deeds. I don't want to just save this farm, she said, her voice trembling slightly with vulnerability. I want to invest in it. I want to help you make it thrive, to build the legacy you've always dreamed of. She paused, her gaze hopeful. But more than that, I want to invest in a future with you, if you'll have me. This love story is the only merger I'm interested in. It was the ultimate surprise, the question he never dreamed he would hear. She wasn't just his savior, she wanted to be his partner. She saw him not as a project, but as her equal, the missing piece of her own life's puzzle. It was a testament to the idea of destiny, that two souls from opposite ends of the universe could find each other and create something beautiful. It was the happy ending that their unlikely love story deserved. In that moment, all the barriers between them, farmer and heiress, rich and poor, crumbled into dust. He saw only Angela, the woman he loved, and with tears of joy streaming down his face, Gerald Medina finally found his voice. His answer wasn't just about accepting her offer. It was about accepting a future filled with love, redemption, and the profound truth that the greatest treasure in the world had been inside his own heart all along. And so, The incredible love story of the farmer and the heiress comes to its beautiful conclusion. It began with a simple, unconditional act of kindness and unfolded into a powerful testament that our true worth is measured not by what we have in the bank, but by the richness of our character. Gerald Medina, who thought he had nothing, possessed the one thing a billionaire couldn't find: a heart of pure gold. And Ellis, who had everything, discovered that the greatest fortune in the world was being saved by that very heart. This story is a heart-aching reminder that destiny has a strange and beautiful way of working. It's about overcoming obstacles, the surprise of a lifetime, and the ultimate redemption that comes from leading with kindness. Gerald's integrity was the key that unlocked a future he never could have imagined, proving that virtue is its own reward. But sometimes, destiny adds a few extra wonderful perks. Their journey shows that the biggest plot twist is often realization that love is the most powerful investment we can ever make. We truly hope their story moved you as much as it moved us creating it. Now, we would love to hear from you. What part of this emotional journey impacted you the most? Was it Gerald's unwavering kindness or Angela's stunning power move at the very end? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We're also curious, did you expect a different ending? Or do you think this was the perfect desfecho for their love story? If you believe that kindness is a superpower, please show your support by giving this video a huge thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our next story. Don't let the journey end here. We have a whole library of older videos filled with tales of love, struggle, and surprise just waiting for you. Thank you for being a part of our community. We'll see you in the next one.